The early morning light was barely creeping over the horizon, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed grass of Windsor Great Park. Inside the cozy confines of Adelaide Cottage, the residence the Prince and Princess of Wales had chosen for its relative normality, the household was just beginning to stir. It was a Tuesday, a school day, which meant the gentle chaos of preparing 3 young children for their daily routine was underway. For Prince William, these domestic moments were the most precious currency of his life, a stark and welcome contrast to the formal duties and constitutional pressures that came with being the heir to the throne. His son, Prince Louis, with his boundless energy and mischievous grin, was usually the epicenter of this morning activity. He often found trying to hide his school shoes or negotiating an extra 5 minutes with his favorite toy. However, the tranquility of this particular morning was a facade, a thin veil of normalcy that was about to be violently torn away. Several miles away, in the bowels of a specialized government facility, the intricate web of the Royal and Specialist Protection, RASP, was already vibrating with a low, urgent hum. For days, a multi-agency task force, comprising officers from the Metropolitan Police, the National Crime Agency, NCA, and MI5, had been tracking a complex logistical puzzle. Their intelligence, gleaned from signals intercepts and human sources, pointed to a sophisticated operation attempting to exploit the UK's porous maritime borders. The target was not drugs or weapons, at least not in the traditional sense. The shipping manifest, a masterpiece of forgery, declared the contents to be high-end automotive parts and agricultural machinery, destined for a warehouse in Slough, a short drive from the Windsor estate. But the intelligence was chillingly specific. Concealed within the shipment was a suspicious package, an item whose very nature had been redacted in the initial briefings that landed on the desk of the King's most senior security advisors. The destination, however, was what made the blood of every officer in the room run cold: Adelaide Cottage. Specifically, it was a package whose delivery protocol suggested it was intended to be handled by someone with access to the most intimate family spaces, spaces occupied by Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and most alarmingly, the youngest, Prince Louis. The threat matrix had been upgraded to critical in the early hours of the morning. This was no longer a theoretical threat or a far-off concern about terrorist cells. This was a tangible, physical object, wrapped in a plausible lie, making its way toward a 6-year-old boy. The operation to intercept it was a study in quiet, coordinated panic. The shipment had already cleared a preliminary customs check at the port of Felixstowe, its false paperwork seemingly convincing enough to pass the initial scan. It was now on a lorry, rumbling its way down the A14, then the M11, and finally onto the M25, the orbital motorway that encircles London. The decision-making process was fraught with tension. To stop the lorry on a public highway risked exposing the operation, potentially tipping off a wider network. It could also trigger a catastrophic outcome if the package was volatile and the suspects decided to detonate it remotely. Conversely, to let it continue toward its destination, Windsor, was unthinkable. In a secure conference room, a video call connected the Home Secretary, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and a representative from the royal household. Prince William, though not officially part of the operational command, was being kept informed by his private secretary. The news was delivered to him in a private sitting room at the cottage, away from the children's ears. As he listened to the cold, clinical language of the security briefing, the talk of containment, interdiction, and risk assessment, his world narrowed to a single point of focus. The voice on the other end of the line mentioned the package's trajectory, and its cleverly disguised nature, and the fact that it was nominally addressed to a logistics hub that served the Crown estate. And then came the words that ignited a fire in the prince's soul. "We have reason to believe the intended recipient's environment was the nursery." William's reaction was not one of visible panic, but a profound, icy stillness that those close to him recognized as his most dangerous mode. This was the man who had flown search and rescue missions, who had stared down the paparazzi after his mother's death, and who had calmly taken his children to school just hours after learning his wife was undergoing major abdominal surgery. He did not scream or shout. He looked at the officer who had delivered the news, a man he had known for years, and asked a single, quiet question. "What are you doing to stop it?" The answer was not immediately reassuring. The lorry was being tracked via its GPS, but the police were in a dilemma. They had to be absolutely certain of the players involved. A simple traffic stop would only catch the driver, who was likely an unwitting pawn. They needed to follow it to the drop-off point to see who came to collect the specific pallet. But that meant allowing a potential bomb or chemical agent to get within a few miles of the prince's home. The risk was deemed unacceptable. The order was given. The lorry would be intercepted at a service station on the M25, just west of London, an area that could be locked down with minimal public exposure. As the morning sun climbed higher, oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath it, William made a decision that surprised his security detail. He went upstairs. He found Louis, who was busy helping his nanny pack his school bag by adding a toy dinosaur and a half-eaten bag of fruit snacks. William knelt down, his large frame filling the small doorway of the bedroom. He didn't mention danger or bad men. He just gave his son a long, tight hug, pressing his face into the boy's soft hair, breathing in the scent of childhood, shampoo, sleep, and innocence. For a moment, the future King of England was just a father, holding his child against a world he suddenly realized was far more terrifying than he had ever allowed himself to believe. Back on the M25, the operation unfolded with clinical precision. Unmarked police vehicles boxed in the lorry as it pulled into the Cobham services. The driver, a man from Romania who spoke little English, was bewildered as armed officers in balaclavas surrounded his cab, ordering him out at gunpoint. He was quickly detained, questioned, and, as intelligence suggested, released when it became clear he had no idea his cargo contained anything other than the alternators and tractor parts listed on his manifest. The real operation began in the refrigerated trailer. Specialist search teams, dressed in full hazmat suits, used sniffer dogs and X-ray equipment to scan the pallets. It took them 45 minutes to find the anomaly, a false compartment built into the base of a pallet supposedly containing industrial machinery. What they found was not a bomb. It was not explosives, or radioactive material, or chemical weapons. It was something far more insidious, like something designed to exploit the modern world's dependence on technology. Inside the compartment, wrapped in anti-static foam and lead shielding to avoid detection, were several high-capacity solid-state hard drives and a sophisticated signal relay device. Forensic analysis would later reveal that these drives contained a trove of malicious software, malware designed to infiltrate specific networks. The target, according to the embedded code, was the private Wi-Fi network at Adelaide Cottage. The goal was not to blow up the building, but to own it, to watch it, to listen to it. The revelation sent a new wave of horror through the intelligence community. This was a close-access cyber operation. Someone had physically penetrated the supply chain to plant a device that, once activated by the relay, these would have given a hostile state actor or a criminal enterprise full access to the family's private communications, their schedules, their children's conversations with their parents, and potentially the security camera feeds. It was a spy's dream. The relay device was set to be triggered by a short-range signal, meaning someone had to be nearby to activate it. The plan, investigators deduced, was for an unwitting delivery man to drop the pallet at the local depot, where a seconded employee or a compromised contractor would then ensure the defective part, the hard drives, was delivered directly to the cottage's IT support for troubleshooting, thereby bypassing digital firewalls. When this intelligence was relayed back to Kensington Palace, and subsequently to William, the theoretical threat became terrifyingly real. This wasn't a distant enemy. This was an enemy who wanted to crawl inside his home, to watch his children sleep, to listen to his wife read bedtime stories. The initial icy stillness William had displayed was now replaced by a different emotion, a cold, righteous fury. But he knew he had to channel it. Panic was a luxury he could not afford. He had a family to protect and an institution to steady. That afternoon, a crisis meeting was convened. It was not held in a government bunker, but in a private drawing room at Windsor Castle. Present were the King's private secretary, the head of the Metropolitan Police's Protection Command, and the Director General of MI5. They expected to brief a concerned royal, to offer platitudes about enhanced security and ongoing investigations. They were not prepared for the man who walked through the door. William entered the room not as a son seeking reassurance, but as a future monarch asserting his authority. He had spent the hours since the interception reading every file, every risk assessment, and every previous security breach report he could get his hands on. He knew about the 2021 crossbow intruder who had breached the castle grounds on Christmas Day, vowing to assassinate his grandmother. He knew about the masked thieves who had scaled a 6-foot fence in October 2024, stealing a truck and a quad bike from a farm just 5 minutes from where his children slept. He knew about the convicted felon who, in 2019, had been hired by a delivery company and had waltzed into Kensington Palace grounds, chatting with a young George and Charlotte before anyone thought to run a background check. He knew about the man who, just months ago, had been arrested on the grounds of Windsor Castle with Class A drugs in his possession. He listened in silence as the MI5 chief laid out the details of the foiled plot. When they finished, expecting questions, William leaned forward. His voice was low, but it carried the weight of generations. "You are telling me," he began, his blue eyes fixed on the senior officer, "that a shipment containing the digital equivalent of a listening device, designed to be installed in my children's home, got within 50 miles of them because someone falsified a shipping label." The officer began to explain the complexities of border security, the sheer volume of freight, and the difficulty of screening every item. William raised a hand, silencing him mid-sentence. "I am not here to assign blame for the past," he said, "and I am here to ensure it cannot happen in the future. My son, Louis, is 6 years old. He thinks a policeman is someone who helps you cross the road. He does not know that people have tried to get to him before. And I intend to keep it that way. But to do that, I need to know that the system protecting him is not just good, but impenetrable." He then did something that, according to insiders, shocked the security professionals in the room. He began to question their protocols with a granular detail that betrayed a sharp, strategic mind. He asked about the vetting process for contractors working on the Crown estate. He demanded a timeline for the implementation of a new AI-driven digital perimeter security system that had been discussed for years but never funded. And he questioned why the physical security fence at certain access points to the Windsor estate was still only 6 feet high in places. "If 2 masked men can scale it to steal a quad bike," he said, referencing the 2024 incident, "what's stopping someone with worse intentions?" It was a direct challenge to the status quo. For decades, royal security had operated on a principle of layered defense, relying on the sheer mystique and historic perimeter of the palaces. William was making it clear that this was no longer enough. The threat had evolved from the lone wolf with a crossbow to sophisticated state-backed actors using the global supply chain as a weapon. The defense had to evolve too. The meeting, scheduled for an hour, stretched into 3. By the end, concrete actions were agreed upon. A full review of all delivery protocols to the Windsor estate was to be completed within 30 days. Funding for the digital security upgrade was fast-tracked. The physical perimeter, including the fence line near Adelaide Cottage, was to be reinforced and embedded with sensor technology. But more than the logistical changes, William had achieved a psychological shift. He had sent a clear message. The protection of his family was not just a matter of police procedure. It was a matter of national priority, and he would be watching, personally, to ensure it was treated as such. In the days that followed, life at Adelaide Cottage outwardly returned to its gentle rhythm. Louis went back to complaining about his vegetables and demanding stories about firemen helicopters. But for William, a new normal had set in, and he found himself looking at delivery vans with a different eye. He noticed the placement of security cameras. He checked in with his protection officer more frequently. The weight of the crown, a burden he knew would one day fully rest on his head, suddenly felt heavier. It was no longer about duty and service in the abstract. It was about the tangible, terrifying responsibility of keeping small, trusting souls safe from a world that had proven once again that it could be very dark indeed. The story of the intercepted shipment did not make the newspapers. It was buried under the Official Secrets Act, known only to a select few. But within the hushed corridors of power, it became a legend. It was the day the future king stopped being a ceremonial figurehead and became an active, demanding, and strategically minded guardian of his realm. It was the day Prince William reacted boldly, not with a sword or a speech, but with the quiet, unshakable determination of a father who had looked into the abyss and had chosen, with every fiber of his being, to fight back. The suspicious shipment had been stopped, but the war for his children's safety had just entered a new, more intense phase, and William was determined to win it.